we were in a faculty meeting, and I said that the proposals that were moving through were a threat to the Enlightenment values that were the basis of the institution. And what I got back was something I had never heard before, which was an attack not only on the Enlightenment, but on the idea of enlightenment. And I was just so stunned. I was a college professor amongst faculty, and somebody was actually saying out loud that enlightenment was a problem.
So, enlightenment is apparently racist. Science is apparently racist. Academia is apparently racist. Like, oh my God, world, what are we doing here? What is going on, world? I am the Hungarian Experiment. And if you guys have been following along my YouTube channel for the last year to 2 years now, I've been calling out that science is weak. Yeah, our scientific system is extremely flawed, and I have broken down many pieces of scientific research that I find other influencers and other people try to utilize to make bold claims out there in the world. And I try to justify and show how a lot of those scientific research that they utilize or media utilizes to make these bold claims is very weak in nature. And if you guys saw the title of this video, and you guys saw actually a recent video that I made showing that here in Canada, and here in my city of London, Ontario, here in Canada, they just made racism a public health crisis. And now they're trying to say that science is racist. We're getting so deluded and so lost in this world. Science, when it is true, when it is strong science, doesn't have a race. There's no boundaries to it. And as we're going to get to here, you guys probably saw that little clip at the beginning with Bret Weinstein from the latest Joe Rogan Experience Podcast. He shows he's a college professor. He actually got chased out of one of the schools by these mobs of liberal students, and he shows that the sciences is actually very liberal.
Academia is tremendously liberal. Inside of a university, there is every desire to bring people who do not look like the old white guys that have done so much of the past work in science. There is a desire to broaden, so it is not true that privately scientists are harboring racist views and talking about them and then, behaving themselves when they're around people who are of a different color. It's not like that.
They want, and they've actually made grants possible to allow more minorities to come in. And we're going to dive deeper into that here, but I want to show you guys just how ridiculous we're getting here in the world. So, as you can see there, researchers around the world prepare to shut down STEM and strike for Black Lives Matter. Now, if you guys don't know what STEM stands for, it is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yeah, they want to shut this stuff down during these crazy times. So as we see there, thousands of researchers around the world have pledged to pause their work on Wednesday to support the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement and effort against racism in the scientific community and society at large. Responding to calls from an array of organizers operating under banners, including the Strike for Black Lives Matter, Shut Down STEM, and Shut Down Academia. How ridiculous is that? If anything, we need more academia. We need more people involved in this kind of stuff. Numerous university laboratories, scientific societies, technical journals, and others have pledged to spend the 10th of June focused on issues of racial equality and inclusiveness. Now again, I'm all for making things more equal, but we need to make sure things are fair and justified. And just because someone is a certain race, it should have nothing to do with it. And again, as we're going to get into what Bret Weinstein says here, the sciences are extremely liberal. And we need to fix our scientific system because it is broken, it is corrupted, and it's the system that was set up before us, before our generation, that allowed this to happen. We need to fix the system, but just striking for inequality doesn't do anything. So let's get into a little of what Bret Weinstein has to say here.
So it is not true that privately scientists are harboring racist views and talking about them and then, behaving themselves when they're around people who are of a different color. It's not like that, okay? There's a desire to have those people show up and get the job because, for one thing, it takes the pressure off. To the extent that departments don't look like the demographics of the country in which these departments are housed, That raises questions. And so there's a desire to bring in anybody who makes it clear that that's not going on.
So as you can see there, he's a college professor and he sees this going on in the universities. There is a desire to bring people in of other ethnicities into the science programs. Now what we're going to see here is the system that was created has undershot the price of these jobs, the wages that these jobs pay after. So people who are in more affluent nature, who can go into the sciences and then get a job in the sciences that doesn't pay really well, they stay in the sciences. But as we're going to see here in what he explains, that someone, take for instance, a young black man who came up from a shitty situation in life and went to school for the sciences, he has no rationale to actually stay in the sciences because of how convoluted the system has gotten, how they've flooded the market and dropped down these wages. So someone who is, from a shitty situation in life, who doesn't have parents who have lots of money, has no reason to stay in the sciences. He might go to become a doctor, which is still a shitty job, but he's going to have tons of loans he has to pay off. Whereas how they set up the sciences and how they set up academia is that they want graduate students teaching these kind of things. Our scientific system is broken. Our science is weak, it's flawed, and we need to change this. We need to fix this. And again, like I explained in my last video, racism is a public health crisis. Just screaming, oh, we need to change this, we need to do something. It doesn't do anything. We need to fundamentally change the systems that are there. And again, it's not about race, it's about the systems and the corruptness behind it. But let's keep going here.
I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know what fraction of people who get PhDs actually get the job that they've trained for, but it's tiny.
Is it really?
I'll be like 1 in 20.
Really?
Yeah.
Because there's only so many positions, and every year you're graduating hundreds and hundreds of people with those degrees.
Well, but there's also a very good reason for this. I mean, it's a terrible reason, but there's a very easily comprehended reason. So universities are fueled in large measure by what's called overhead of the grants. So if you get $1 million grant, half or more will go to your university, right? So that's what builds the buildings and fuels the place. So the university has an incentive to get as many people file grant applications as they can, and they have an incentive to hire people whose grant applications will be large rather than small. So this, for example, is one of the reasons that science has taken up arms against theory, that is to say proper scientific theoreticians like me, and it has instead hired people who run big expensive experiments, because big expensive experiments have big grants, and those big grants bring in money.
So as I've broken down in a bunch of my videos previously, like red meat causes cancer, not good science, a lot of the science we're conducting right now doesn't really prove anything. But we're pouring millions and millions of dollars to conduct these studies. It's this big convoluted system. Again, our scientific system is flawed, it's weak, it's fucked up, just like our political system, just like our food system, just like our education system. It is our generation's responsibility to change this. Now, I know you guys out there might not care about this kind of stuff. You guys don't care about the sciences. But for myself growing up, this is why I didn't go to school for science. I saw how convoluted, how fucked up it was, how people who go into school for science lose their passion. They go in to try to do something and change something. They learn things out of order. They get told what to learn instead of learning it when they're truly wanting to discover it for themselves. I've been on this journey for the last 10 years now. Ever since I was 20, 21, 22 years old, I was fascinated reading different books, and I could have gone to school if I wanted to. I had the marks to go to university, but I decided to go to school to become, if you guys are following along here, resource drilling and blasting technician, because I didn't want to lose that passion behind all this. I wanted to keep learning as I was discovering this kind of stuff, and I'm really glad I did. Now, this is one thing that people will try to hold over people like me, maybe even people like you. That, oh, you didn't go to school for something. Well, it doesn't mean you don't know anything then. Everything, there's so much information out there now that we can absorb this for ourselves. You don't need to go to school, lose all your passion, get taught stuff out of order, so convoluted. And as we see here, where they pour money into these big grants, and you're going to make yourself poor going to school and then have no other opportunity but to take a job that you're not even all that interested in. As he showed there, about 1 out of 20, he doesn't have the numbers of course, but maybe 1 out of 20 people actually go into a job that they get a PhD in. That's ridiculous. You go to school for 6 to 8 years and you don't even go into the field that you've been studying all this time? It's a cycle. It's the rat race. It's meant to keep these people in. It's meant to hold these intellectual people down so they can't do anything bigger and better and actually fix these convoluted, fucked up systems because they're just in so much debt. If you guys saw, I think 6 months ago now, maybe 8 months ago, I've been calling out doctors here on my YouTube channel because they just breeze over the science. They don't actually dive into it. And I've caught Dr. Bio Lane Norton. I've caught Dr. Eric Siddiqui from here in my city of London, Ontario, breezing over scientific research and trying to make these bold claims. And I call them out on it. I'll feature those videos in the description box down below. But just because people go to school for this stuff doesn't mean that they actually know what they're talking about. They were taught what is right in the eyes of the scientific system, in the eyes of this liberal system. But let's keep going here because it just keeps getting crazier.
But if you were a university and what you wanted was to have people writing big expensive grants who were capable of getting them, then what you would want to do is you would want to free those people from teaching, and you would want to get people who weren't so expensive to do the work of the university. And the way you do that is you bring them on as graduate students, and you pay them an appalling wage. You claim that they are not actually workers, that they are students, and they do most of the teaching, and they do a lot of the work of the university for incredibly low amounts of money. They live under poor conditions, and increasingly they have to come from abroad where they are in some sense getting a deal that still makes sense. But this means that we overproduce PhDs. We give people degrees instead of money to do the work of the university in order that the people who are capable of getting the grants spend almost full time doing that job. And it's a racket.
So as you can see there, it's a racket. It's a whole convoluted system to keep people within the system. And again, someone young coming from a situation that maybe they're underprivileged, they don't have the opportunity to stay in the sciences after that. They have to go into something like becoming a doctor, spend a couple more years so they can actually pay off their loans, or else they're going to be poor their whole life. A lot of these people who work their way out of these shitty situations go to school to be that first one in college and become something big, so that way they can help their families. How disappointing must it be to a lot of these people? And if this is you, I would love for you to tell us your situation in the comment section down below. If this has happened to you, where you went into the sciences, or you went to do something bigger to help bring money and change the life from the previous generations before you, only to realize you got caught up in this convoluted, fucked up system. And after 4, 5, 6 years that you've been in it now, you're stuck. You're stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and now you're having to do a job that you don't even really care for, and it's outside of your wheelhouse, but you're still doing it because you have no other option besides going to work a minimum wage job. So let me know in the comment section below there. But as Bret Weinstein just said here, it's all a racket. They pay the graduate students shitty money, and these are the ones teaching other students. It's ridiculous. Our whole system is fucked right now. Science, politics, education, food, everything is fucked up right now. It's our responsibility to change this. We need to stand up and say we want different. But again, screaming about racism, I don't think fixes the system here. Because as we're showing here, having a day off for STEM to show inequality within the sciences, anyone has the opportunity to get in it. It's a very liberal thing. They want as many different demographics in it to show that there is no racism within the scientific system. But it's the system that was created by these previous generations before us that made these crazy visas, that made these crazy grants, that lock people in. Like if right now I'm writing a book called Why Science is Weak and Why We Need to Fix It, the scientific narrative, the story of science. And I break down a potential doctor and researcher and scientist who I believe is kind of tweaking in his scientific studies and is a bit biased. And he has to keep up this racket because he's getting millions of dollars funneled into his laboratory, and he has 10, 20, 30, 40 people who are employed by him. If all of a sudden it found out that the thing he was studying isn't really worth that studying, he's got so much to consider. This also spans back bigger to like the people who are working with the president and people who are making all these big choices and decisions with COVID right now. We're going to get into here the virologists. They don't want to lose their jobs, so they're willing to say things that they might even not believe in. This is ridiculous. Our highest intellectuals in the world, the people that we want to trust, the people that we look to be giving us good advice, we cannot trust them. And why? Because they're part of this system. Maybe they want to do better and be better, but they're stuck within this system. Now, I'm not saying trust me and listen to me 100%. I'm sharing this guy. Maybe we shouldn't even trust Bret Weinstein all that much. But I don't hear a lot of people discussing this kind of stuff, that our scientific system is flawed and weak. All I see people is sharing research and trying to say, this is the way it needs to go. Look at this piece of research right here. And ever since I've been 20 years old, for the last 10 years of my life now, that I've been looking through scientific research, I've seen nothing but flaws. I've seen nothing but weak science within it. Our scientific system is broken. But as we see here as well too, this is boring stuff. This is bland. This is not what people want.
The problems are several. Unfortunately, they're not tremendously interesting. They're sort of dry inside baseball stuff.
So as Bret says there, this is dry inside baseball stuff. It's not interesting to discuss this. And I can tell because I don't have a lot of people interested in the scientific stuff that I'm sharing on my YouTube channel. You guys just don't care, which I understand. It's boring stuff. To me, it's fascinating. To me, it's interesting. But it's not sexy stuff. It's not drama. It's not the latest fucking fad going on in the world. And that's the sad thing about our society right now. If we want to be the change in this world, if our generation is actually going to change these fucked up and corrupt systems, guess what? You got to stop giving a fuck about the Kardashians. You got to stop giving a fuck about all this bullshit going on. You got to start caring about this kind of stuff. You got to start supporting people who are actually diving into the science and showing you guys this stuff. We need to change. We need to change ourselves. And we vote every day. We vote for our politicians by the media that we watch and the news sources that we watch. We vote every day with our dollars with a plate on our food. And we vote every day when you decide to watch some stupid ass Netflix show rather than digesting this podcast, which I really suggest you guys watch. Because again, I'm just showing you a few clips of this 3-hour podcast. I've got years of stuff on my YouTube channel where I'm debunking and looking through science and showing you that it's weak in nature and showing that what I think we need is human experiments out there in the world. Taking the weak forms of our scientific studies and our scientific research and our scientific system and creating something bigger out of it, which is the human experiments. And I believe we can make it fun and interesting for you guys. I'm not going to dive into human experiments right now. We're going to keep going on here. But we need to change. We need to change what we care about, what we watch, what we're interested in, what we talk about to our friends. All this stuff starts with us, our generation.
That there was an explicit conspiracy to game the visa system in order to keep this system running. That in fact, effectively a fake shortage of science students was created to allow the universities to basically flood the market to drive the wages down. But all of these things mean that if you are coming from circumstances that have been challenging and you make it, you don't want to go to graduate school in the sciences because it's a dumb move. You're going to take having gotten your head above water and then you're going to voluntarily drown. And that doesn't make any sense. You're much better off, even as bad as, being a doctor has become. It used to be a great job. Now it's kind of a sucky job, but you're better off doing that because at least it's a job. You'll pay off your loans, you'll make it. And so basically what we see is that there are lots of reasons that a rational person from certain demographics is less likely to go into the sciences. That's not racism in the sciences. It's, again, one of these echoes of a past racism or a past indifference that is having huge impacts on the present.
So there we go. As he just said it there, Why would someone coming from a shitty situation in life want to go into the sciences when they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into it and then not be able to get a job after that they can even pay off their loans with? Our systems are broken, guys. We need to fix this. And this is where it gets crazy. Bret's going to dive into here how at his own college, at his own university there, he had another professor challenge the whole concept of enlightenment, because this one professor, and what I think a lot of students who were rallying before all this kind of crazy protests and stuff a year or two back now, when Bret realized this was an issue going on and starting in the world, is that this professor is trying to justify that enlightenment is racist. Which I can understand, because as he's going to get into here, it came from Europe and it was a product of white people. But in general, it is a tool. And if you guys know me, I see everything in life as a tool to optimize ourselves, to optimize our bodies, our minds, and to move forward in life, and to use this to save time, to get farther ahead. And just because it was created by white people, it's something that everyone can use, and there's no race fundamentally in it. Science is true when it's strong science. It's all this weak science that's starting to go on in the world, that's been going on for the last couple of decades now.
We were in a faculty meeting, and I said that the proposals that were moving through were a threat to the Enlightenment values that were the basis of the institution. And what I got back was something I had never heard before, which was an attack not only on the Enlightenment, but on the idea of enlightenment. And I was just so stunned. I was a college professor amongst faculty, and somebody was actually saying out loud that enlightenment was a problem.
So, enlightenment is apparently racist. Science is apparently racist. Academia is apparently racist. Like, oh my God, world, what are we doing here?
The Enlightenment was a European project, right? It definitely had a light skin tone, right? It was European men. It was not a Jewish project. But I am not embarrassed about taking the tools of the Enlightenment and wielding. They don't belong to Europe.
Right. They're human.
They're human tools. They were a discovery in Europe, and arguably the discovery in Europe happened because of unfair exclusion of other people. But at some level, who the fuck cares? These are the most powerful tools ever. And you can't uninvent them. The thing to do is distribute them as broadly as possible.
Now that's some powerful stuff. Who the fuck cares? These are the most powerful tools ever created, and you can't uninvent them. Like, this is like, it is just a fundamental thing. Like, strong science is strong science that we can base a lot off of. You can't just start canceling science and shutting down science and shutting down academia. And now we're not going to dive into all this. Go check out that full podcast. But what he breaks down there is that when you start moving away from science and saying science doesn't matter, science is racist, science is this, science is that, you take away this powerful tool from those who are in those situations. And you start saying that they can't even use those, or they can use them, but it doesn't even really matter because it is racist and there's flaws to it. And again, I'm not trying to say that there are no flaws, because I believe our scientific system is weak. But as we saw there, it's not the racism behind it that makes it weak. It's the convoluted system, the gaming of the visa system, the overrunning of grants. It's this fucked up convoluted system. We need to change that world. And now we get in today's time with COVID and everything going on with virologists and showing how this is weak. Let's get into it.
But then we've got a problem, right? Now you see another part of our system that has become feeble and inept. You see, the virologists might circle the wagons in order to protect their access to grant money. So the very people who need to tell you, holy shit, this could be very dangerous, here's what may have happened, and here's what we would do to figure out what the epidemiology will look like, what the symptomatology will look like. Those people may be covering their asses at all of our expense.
Did you hear that, world? Virologists might be covering their asses to save their money. And this is what I'm breaking down in my book, Why Science is Weak and Why We Need to Fix It. The story of science, the scientific narrative. We need to fix this. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys made it this far, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. And on your way down there, make sure you smash that like button. Again, if you've gone into the sciences and you've noticed any of this convolution, this fucked up system, and what it's doing to the world, I want to know. So go leave your comment in the comment section below. And guys, I really suggest going to check out this full podcast. Again, it's like 3 hours long. They dive into a lot of other concepts, but I think this is a podcast everyone needs to listen to. Turn off Netflix for tonight. Watch this podcast. You need to see this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am the Hungarian Experiment.
I am the Hungarian Experiment.